Hello everybody, it's Brian for GadgetUnit.com, and in this video I'll be bringing you my quick and dirty review of the Samsung Galaxy S4. In front of me obviously is the white model, and it runs on AT&T's network here in the US, and the available storage capacities include 16 gigabytes, 32 gigabytes, and 64 gigabytes. Now there is a micro SD card slot on the Galaxy S4, so you can expand it up to an additional 64 gigabytes. This is actually the second time I'm recording this video because the first time I had some catastrophic audio issues. So this is pretty much take two. So if I sort of rush through things, then that is why. My full written review will always be available for you to check out on your own. So in terms of specs, the North American model uses the Qualcomm Snapdragon S600 quad-core processor clocked at 1.9 GHz, while most of the international models will use Samsung's Exynos 5 8-core processors, so that uses 4 cores at 1.6 GHz and 4 additional cores at 1.2 GHz when needed. It has 2 GB of RAM, a 2600 mAh user replaceable battery, a 5-inch 1080 by 1920 Full HD Super AMOLED display with Gorilla Glass 3. The 13 megapixel rear-facing camera shoots 1080p video at 30 frames per second, not 60 frames per second, unfortunately, maybe in next year's device. And the 2 megapixel front-facing camera also records video at 1080p 30. And lastly, this phone does run Android 4.2.2 Jelly Bean. This is what the packaging looks like real quick. I've already done a dedicated unboxing video, but the packaging is very eco-friendly, and inside, of course, you do get some documentation. You get this USB wall charger. You do get a pair of earbuds that also have an inline remote control and microphone, so you could use this for calls and controlling your device. I haven't tested these, but I do imagine that the audio quality is pretty decent. These do look like fairly decent pairs of headphones that come with devices. Now lastly, we do have our micro USB cable, so obviously you're going to be using this for charging and syncing your device, and that is the packaging and what's included. So on to the phone itself, starting with the design and the hardware, mainly the hardware. So this phone is made of plastic materials, and most people think that that's an obvious turn off. My camera's moving down on my tripod. So like I said, this does use plastic materials, but the phone itself feels pretty solidly built. That's what I was going for. Although the sides are also made of plastic, they do have sort of a chrome design to it. This can sometimes be a bit slippery. I've had the phone slip out of my hands twice, although the fall onto the ground was nothing too major, fortunately. So if I were to use this phone as my own personal permanent phone, I would definitely pop a case onto this to solve that problem and to give the phone some extra protection, of course. In terms of design, I really like it. I was a fan of the Galaxy S4's design, the Galaxy S3's design, and this is pretty much a slightly updated version of that. So they did add sort of a design flair to the back and the front. Maybe you can see it here. Sort of like a dotted texture design on the back and the front. Can't really see it too well on the front, but you should be able to see it from the back. So that is that. The front, though, has pretty much remained the same. You have a number of sensors and your front-facing camera at the top, and of course your earpiece, the Samsung logo, our 5-inch display, a home button, and you do have a couple of touch buttons for back and menu. On the right side of the device, we do have our power button, while on the right side, we do have left side, we do have our volume rocker. At the top of the Galaxy S4, we do have our infrared blaster, so you are able to use this to control your television, your cable box, and pretty much any other device. You have your 3.5mm headset jack, and at the bottom of the phone, we do have our micro USB port. At the back, we have our 13 megapixel rear-facing camera, flash, carrier branding, Galaxy S4 logo, our rear-facing speaker, and I'm going to go ahead and take the back cover off to show that to you real quick. So in here we do have our 2600 mAh battery, SIM card slot, and our micro SD card slot. So the back cover itself is just a thin piece of plastic, but it does use several points of contact to keep itself firmly planted onto the phone itself, so you don't have to worry about that. The size of the phone for me, I'd say I have about average sized hands, and this is pretty much as large as a phone needs to be. I'm left-handed, so sometimes reaching things in the upper right corner are a little bit difficult, but it's not too bad. So that's really it in terms of design and hardware. So moving on to the display, this display is just fantastic. That's probably the main selling point of this device, and that is its display. So for me, watching live television using the Sling Player app with my Sling box, it's just a completely different world compared to my iPhone 4's tiny 4-inch display. Now, AMOLED displays have been known for being a bit too oversaturated in the past, mainly with the Galaxy S2 in my experience, and I think that they've pretty much nailed it here in terms of keeping things a bit neutral while still making things look really good. So for Samsung's TouchWiz Android interface, they've used colors to really demonstrate the colors of the display. It just looks really nice, and this display is just fantastic. It's really bright, and the viewing angles are really excellent as well. Although the one possibly major problem with the display is when you're using the phone in direct sunlight. It's extremely difficult to see, if not impossible. So fortunately, if you're in a little bit of shade, that helps quite a bit, but for the most part, the display is very hard to see in direct sunlight, even with the brightness turned up all the way. On that note, the auto brightness feature is a little bit gimmicky. Sometimes it works the way it should, sometimes it does not. And that is pretty much it with the display. Now for speaker, network, and call quality, the speaker quality is really quite good actually. It can get plenty loud, although I would not recommend putting it too loud or else it'll start clipping and sounding pretty disgusting. It's plenty clear enough for you to use this for music, casual movies, and things like that. And the front-facing earpiece works pretty well in terms of phone calls. Of course, that's going to be down to the carrier and whatnot. And on that note, my 4G LTE speeds with AT&T have been pretty good. I mean, of course, that is mainly dependent on where you are, but I've seen the fastest LTE speeds I've ever seen, and that was made with this phone. So I've reached speeds of 72 megabits per second down and 23 megabits per second up. So 70 megabits per second down is just incredible stuff. So your speeds are obviously going to vary, but those are just some of the things that I've been achieving. So on to the software. Samsung's overlay for Android is called TouchWiz, and they've made things very simple, so it's pretty easy to use, and the interface is very attractive, at least when it comes to the launcher. Some of the things that they've done to the stock applications, such as email and messaging, are kind of ugly, especially when it comes down to the settings app. There are just so many tabs and different options here. Sometimes it's hard to find something specific unless you've been in and out of the application several times. So that's really my major complaint about the device, and that's really what Samsung has done to the Android interface and experience. I know that they're trying to make things easier and give you more features, but sometimes it makes things a little bit harder to do. And when I first started using this, TouchWiz was fantastic. It was cool and it was new, but the more I used it, the more annoyed I got by it. Of course, you can get a different launcher in the Google Play Store, but that only solves a small problem of it because Samsung has their interface tweaks pretty much everywhere else. I mean, look at this. There are so many toggles that you can use to turn certain features on and off. On that note, there are some neat and unique features on the device that are a bit gimmicky. They don't really work too well, but they are here if you ever so want to use them. One of those includes air gesture, which allows you to sort of wave your hand over your screen to sort of move to the next photo in your gallery, for example, or to answer your phone. The next feature is called Air View, which allows you to sort of hover your finger above the screen in an application such as the web browser, and it allows you to zoom into text a little bit. If you're in the gallery app, you could hover your finger over a picture and it will show you a slightly larger version of that. So those are some of the things that you can do with Air View. And there are a number of other features that I didn't really test because, I mean, for most people, they probably won't use it. But back towards the Samsung interface, as I said, the more I used it, the more annoyed I got by it. So if I were to use this phone as my personal device, I would probably go ahead and root it and get rid of as much Samsung things as possible, or just install a custom stock Android ROM. Now, interestingly, Samsung is releasing their own version of the Galaxy S4 that comes with a stock version of Android Jelly Bean. So that's going to be out sometime in June in the United States, and it will cost $650. So that's probably going to keep most people from getting it. And that's probably why Samsung decided to lock the bootloader on the Galaxy S4. So the Google version does use an unlocked bootloader, so you could use any ROM you want for development purposes or just enthusiast purposes or anything like that. So that's pretty much it in terms of software. In terms of performance though, I think that the quad-core processor handles opening applications and performing them very well. Now the thing about the RAM though is that when you're doing a clean reboot, it will immediately use about 850 to 900 megabytes of RAM. So that does leave you plenty left over for opening multiple applications, but the RAM, at least at that point, does get eaten up fairly quickly. So, I mean, it's just amazing to me how, I mean, Windows 8 on my laptop uses that much RAM on a clean boot, and that's a much more involved operating system than Android. So obviously Samsung has so much going on here, so that's pretty much why they've included 2 gigabytes of RAM. I think that they could have done much more optimizational stuff to it to sort of decrease that a bit and make things faster, because honestly this phone it doesn't feel as fast as I thought it would. Coming from an iPhone 5 with a little 1.3 gigahertz dual core processor and 1 gigabyte of RAM, it really didn't seem too much speedy. And I mean, I really don't know why that is. I think that it ultimately comes down to the software optimizations that Samsung really needs to do to the device to make it perform like it ultimately should. I mean, it has ultra fast hardware, 2 gigahertz pretty much, quad core processor, and 2 gigabytes of RAM. It really should be performing faster than that, but that's not to say that the device is slow. I mean, it's plenty fast. It opens applications quickly. It performs them very well, especially in terms of games. Although when it comes to loading web pages with the Chrome browser, at least compared to my iPhone 5, it's noticeably slower than the iPhone 5. So there are a lot of differences between the apps though, but web browsing performance on the Galaxy S4 is also not as fast as I would have hoped. But for most people, it's going to be plenty fast, so the speed and performance isn't too much of an issue to worry about for most people. Moving on to battery life real quick, it can easily get most people through the day. I mean, for me, I've been using this with GPS on, Wi-Fi on. Of course, I'll be using 4G LTE when I was out. Brightness was set to auto as well, and I was easily able to get through most of the day. There were some instances where the battery was very low, and I think that most people will probably want to keep their charger with them at the end of the day because you will probably end up charging your device. But fortunately, this does have a user replaceable battery, so you are able to, for instance, buy 3 or 5 additional batteries and just swap those out whenever one gets too low. Next up, the camera. So I've taken a number of sample shots on my recent trip to Florida, so I'll be showing those on your screen right now, and they pretty much speak for themselves. Now, in terms of the night mode, which I've used quite a bit, it definitely helps, and it basically increases the brightness and it decreases the contrast to make things a little bit more visible during the night. It also increases the noise, unfortunately, but that's just the way it is. It doesn't really come close to the Lumia Windows Phone or the HTC One in terms of low light situations, but it's not really too bad. In terms of video, I didn't really test that too much, but it's also good as well. And here's a quick sample clip of that as well.
Hang tight, little addicts. Don't come any closer. There we go.
And to sort of wrap things up, it's really no wonder why the Galaxy S4 is already the fastest selling Android-powered smartphone on the market. I mean, Samsung has sold more than 10 million units in less than a month. So it's definitely going to continue to be one of the most popular smartphones out there, if not the smartphone of the year. Now, is it worth the upgrade over the Galaxy S3? Probably not, and especially considering a lot of the Galaxy S4's features will be headed over to the Galaxy S3 via software updates. But if you're upgrading from something else, should you get it? I really don't know. It's a tough call because HTC has their One and it gives you better build quality and materials, but software is a bit different. I do like Samsung's launcher. The TouchWiz launcher looks nice, but some of the visual tweaks and general changes that they've made to applications might be a bit annoying to some people. To me it was, although you are able to get around this once a actual root comes out and you're able to install custom ROMs if you want to go that route, or you could just live with it because honestly it's not too bad. It's just a little bit annoying to deal with sometimes. I really do like the design and the hardware of the phone itself. It looks really gorgeous under most lighting conditions actually, and especially the display. That's really the main reason why I like this phone so much. The 5-inch display is just really beautiful and it works extremely well with pretty much anything that you want to do with your device. Personally, am I going to upgrade to the Galaxy S4? Probably not. If I really wanted to go the Android route from the iPhone route, I'm just too invested into the iPhone to really switch. I would definitely get the Google version of the Galaxy S4 because it's already rooted, it's already stock, and it's already ready for what I would rather have in an Android smartphone. And hopefully I can get my hand on that one and do another review. But for now, I'll be staying away from the Galaxy S4 as my own personal device, but it's really a solid device, and that's really all there is to it. And that's pretty much it with this video. If you have any comments, questions, or feedback about this or anything else, feel free to leave those down below in the comments area. But that's it with this video, so thanks a lot for watching, and I'll talk to you all very soon.